Bonne soirée à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du Comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing this hearing this evening. And with me this evening are my fellow panel members, Mr. Colin White, Ms. Julia Markovich, and Mr. Scott Hindle. So this hearing is actually being live streamed on YouTube. If you'd like to get a copy of either the agenda or this video later, you can access that information through the city's website. Before we begin, there's a couple of just remarks that we need to make about the committee's jurisdiction. So in fact, the committee's jurisdiction is rather narrow. There's a number of things that we can and cannot consider. So for the most part, the committee needs to focus very narrowly on the items or elements that comprise an application. We do not look at aspects of the proposal which are not related to those variances. So for example, if there was an issue with regards to height, but no requirement for relief from the height restriction under the zoning bylaw, then that is not an issue that the committee can talk about. We also don't look at matters such as noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, illegal construction. We treat everything as if no construction has occurred. We will not entertain any negative or adverse comments about neighbors, agents, applicants, landowners, anyone involved in these proceedings. And if we find during the course of discussion that we need to either add minor variances or increase relief from the zoning bylaw, then we need to adjourn that item to allow it to be recirculated so that it in fact is in the form that it should be. And then we would simply reschedule it to the next available meeting, allowing for the circulation periods. So just a word about the statutory notification requirements. Each applicant is required to post a sign on the property and then to file a statutory declaration about that sign posting. On the online hearings, we have been going with verbal affirmations or swearing of oaths that the sign has been posted. We in fact have no written copies, so we will be doing that for every application that we're hearing this evening. With respect to quorum, if we lose quorum during at any point during the hearing, then what we'll try to do is to reestablish the quorum as to the extent that we can, and if we can't, any items that haven't been dealt with will simply be put on to the next agenda. So in terms of how it all works, the first thing is you should know is that the panel members have had a chance to look at a lot of material before we get here. So there's quite a bit of information that's available to us that we do read, and then we do get a chance to meet even prior to this hearing to make sure that we understand all of the comments, have seen all the material, and can in fact get additional clarification. So we can either ask you as an applicant or an agent to start with a presentation. I think this evening we're going to go with instead what we're calling a fast track, which is to allow the committee members to go straight to asking questions rather than requesting a presentation. The presentations are available to you if you have material in your presentation that you would like to use as part of an answer to a question. That is completely doable. So all you need to do is ask the coordinator to bring up your presentation in those situations. So the panel members get the chance to ask you questions, clarifying questions. Sometimes the application is straightforward and there are no questions from the panel. And then we go to the public hearing portion of the hearing. So at that point, I will go to a speakers list. And after I have invited those who are on the speakers list to address the panel, I then will open it up to the audience in general and anyone who wants to wants to make comments or ask questions, all you need to do is raise your hand and the coordinators can let you in. If you're not on the speakers list, I would ask that you start with your name and your address, and we may need to ask you to spell your last name just to ensure that our record is completely clear. So the panel may also ask you questions after you've had a chance to provide your comments. After all of that is done, we'll close the hearing portion, the public hearing portion on the file, and then we will deliberate if there's additional questions that we may have, or maybe something's been raised by somebody from the public where staff can provide us with additional information. From there, the committee can make and does make oral decisions. Oral and written, but you will get an oral decision this evening, except for if it's a reservation on an application. So let me explain. We can grant, obviously, we can deny, we can adjourn if we find even during the course of discussion that an adjournment would be beneficial to the parties involved, or we can reserve if an application happens to have a great deal of new evidence that's brought forward and that the committee needs to have some time to consider that new information. So in those cases, we do reserve and we still make a decision before the evening is out. All decisions are also written and are issued within 10 days of the hearing. And those written decisions outline the panel's reasoning on any matter. And of course, anyone who's interested can appeal. They have a 20-day appeal period, during which time that decision can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And of course, there is a fee for that. So first item of business is the declarations of conflict of interest. Is there anyone who has anything to report, whether it be in relation to an application on our agenda this evening or on any of the other panel agendas? All right, so for the record, there is no member with a conflict of interest to declare. Confirmation of minutes, we don't have any minutes to adopt tonight, but we do have a number of adjournment requests. So let's start with those. The first one I have is applications 6 and 7. So I'm looking for Mr. Hume.
Good morning or good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Hume. So my understanding is you're aware of the request for an adjournment. You are in agreement?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. So I guess what we're trying to grapple with then, Mr. Hume, is to what date? So we're a little bit worried about a comment in the staff report that indicates that no as-built plans were provided. And because of that, staff feels that it may not have the fullness of information required in order to determine the range of minor variances that may be required.
So, Madam Chairman, we provided an as-built survey and an as-built driveway plan with the recirculation requirement that the city raised. We're in a bit of a unique position in that the owner, this was a partnership, and the owner bought out the builder. So the plans that we have aren't a complete set of plans. So when we look at something, and we don't have complete information as to how something got approved, as you'll see, the staff have identified a minor variance that we require a driveway protruding into the front yard. We're not quite clear how that got approved in the first place without the requirement of having to go and get a minor variance first. So we believe we've provided enough information at this point to determine that the setbacks are appropriate, but with the as-built survey and particularly measurements around the driveway width.
All right, so maybe we'll get to planning staff to provide us with their sort of view of this. Ms. Glazera, can you come forward, please? Good evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so I received a number of documents from Mr. Hume as part of the application package. And there was included, a number of the documents that were included were from the initial building permit application. And there was, I think, a survey from 2021. I was able to determine the need for the additional variance when I looked into the building permit application and found a grading plan that showed a proposed driveway that was partially located between the front wall of the building and the street. So that's how I was able to identify that, pardon me, that at least one additional variance was required if that indeed was the driveway in the plan was what was on site. Pardon me, I'm just going to clear my throat. And so to me, it looked like a variance was required for the driveway being located between the front wall of the house and the street, as well as for width. I think the driveway shown on that plan was 2.4 meters wide. So I wasn't comfortable having identified at least two variances, but again, this was based on a grading plan dated from 2020. That was, in my mind, the most information that I had related to the as-built site plan, and I just felt like it wasn't enough. I've since asked for an as-built plan dated recently, and I asked for measurements of the proposed driveway and for the parking spaces for the two dwelling units to show that they're actually 2.6 by 5.2 behind the front wall of the house.
All right. So did I hear Mr. Hume say that he did provide that information?
Today, Madam Chair.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So we've refiled we went out, we measured the width of the driveway, and it's 3 meters wide. But we acknowledge that the grading plan does show that the driveway now encroaches was approved to encroach into the front yard. So we filed a minor variance for that, and we've included an as-built, a driveway plan with as-built measurements and the as-built real property plan from the surveyor.
All right, so Ms. Glazero, is that going to be enough information for you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only just got them this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to review them. The survey that I received this afternoon, I think I'd have to go back and look at the date. I think it was June 2021. I mean, they're both labeled as, dwelling under construction. The survey doesn't have the driveway listed on it. And then the as-built, the document that's labeled as-built, I'm not exactly sure what the initial document was, but it was since relabeled as-built driveway plan because it's still noting existing dwelling as the former dwelling on 992 Fisher. It's showing proposed storm sewer, proposed sanitary sewer connection. I know this isn't related to the driveway, but to me, it was a proposed site plan. So
yeah, it's not. It is, as you said, it's not an as-built. It's just okay.
Yeah.
So here's where I think, Mr. Hume. So the reason I'm asking all these questions is because what we need to determine is whether the date that we would otherwise adjourn this to. And so I'm now kind of a mind that maybe a sine die adjournment would work best, because I want to make sure that we're dealing with all of the minor variances that we would need.
I can guarantee you that there are no further minor variances on the site. But Madam Chair, we filed for our recirculation, and we'll produce. We have the CAD. So the survey that the city received is the survey of the as-built foundations. So all of the front setbacks, side yards. So it's not going to change. So what we'll do is we'll put that on a plan and we'll label it whatever the city wants us to label it, and we'll go from there. I mean, we can do that on Friday if that suits.
Okay, so yeah, so the way it works is in order to hit September 7th, everything has to be ready, and we will want to know that Ms. Sclerozo, has had a chance to review that new information. So how about then, Mr. Hume, how about we go to September 21st? Gives us a little bit of extra time.
September 21st for an, Madam Chair, I'm in the committee's hands, but that seems like an awful long time.
So the minimum to get to September 7th for recirculation means everything has to be tied up with a bow the morning of September, or this Friday, coming Friday morning. And we as a committee are going to want to know that the planners had the chance to review that.
Fine, Madam Chairman. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'll take whatever date you're going to give me.
And you would prefer a date over sine die?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I think committee members, anybody have any thoughts, questions? All right. In agreement with September 21st? All right.
And so, Madam Chair, before you go, what date do you want this plan? Does this plan have to be submitted to you to be done? Because I don't think there's anything else.
Well, so the plan has to be submitted, and then we need to give time to the planner to actually review it and then be able to confirm to us when she comes back that she's seen the information and she was happy with it, right? So if she can't tell us that before it goes back out on circulation, then that she hasn't been able to confirm that it's all fine and well, then we have a problem. So I'm going to call on our Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Benmar. If you would come forward, please. I just need to know the date for the September 21st. What is the drop dead day for ensuring that the circulation is good?
Madam Chair, our internal closing date for September 21st would be August 22nd.
All right. Thank you.
Fine.
I think. Okay.
That's fine, Madam Chair. We'll meet. We'll be well before that date.
Okay, and it should be, right? So the idea is to get that material back in the hands of our planners and give them the time they need to review it. So, okay, well, with that then, if there's no questions from the panel, I just need to make a call out to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the panel about this request for adjournment to September 21st? All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so then I need a motion. All those in favor of the adjournment to September 21st? All right, so for the record, the decision is unanimous. And Mr. Hume, we'll see you probably before then, but if not, on September 21st then.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next application is 9 and 10. For 1996 Cedar Lane Terrace, and I believe I'm looking for Mr. Yelkotzi. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
So I understand that both you and planning are looking for an adjournment on this application. And I think it's for additional minor variances, if I'm correct. Is that right, Mr. Yelkotzi?
Correct.
Okay. So are you looking then for, and I think there's maybe a number, so I'm thinking we'd go either sine die or we go to September 21st for yours as well.
Madam Chair, we've been able to submit all the documentation already last week. We've also submitted the payment for the fee, so our hope is that we can hit the next hearing date that we can make with the recirculation required.
All right, well, that would be the September 7th then. If everything is in already, then you're good.
Yeah.
I think. And so I just want to, Ms. Scleroso, sorry. I just want to confirm with you that you have what you need for this and that no additional time is required.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I've got everything that I need. I've noted in the, I believe it was in the report that I asked for just a bit more clarity. It was just an additional comment, just a bit more information on the easement and a slightly more detailed site plan. I was a little bit confused about the easement being requested, but I can chat with the applicant about that and sort that out in time.
Okay. All right. So between now and Friday morning, that's what I'm thinking. All right. In that case, Mr. White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I gather that there's a minor variance requirement with respect to something with the configuration of the driveway. Just a question to staff. Do you see any issue with that? Are we seeing any issues with that additional variance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I don't see an issue. The driveway complies with the width as far as I was able to determine. It's an existing condition, and I think yeah, I don't have any issue with it on review.
Thank you.
Okay, then, if there's no more questions from the panel about this proposed adjournment to September 7th, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the adjournment? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, panel members, all those in favor of the adjournment as stated. All right, so for the record, the application is adjourned to September 7th, and we'll see you then, Mr. Yelkotsi.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, the next application is number 11 for 257 Lisgar. Mr. Daly. Mr. Daly.
Madam Chair, if we may step this down, I don't see Mr. Daly online right now.
All right, and there was nobody else identified as a possible additional contact. Let me just check the. Okay, no, I'm not seeing anybody else on the as an agent listed. So, all right, so how about we step this one down and we'll come back to it. Ms. Nguyen, do you know if Mr. Daly was aware that he needed to appear?
I'm sure he was. He did request for September 21st as well.
Okay, but to your knowledge, he had indicated that he would attend this evening?
That was my impression, yes.
All right, then we will come back to this one a little later. There is an additional request for adjournment on application number 12 for 3 Selkirk, and I'm looking for Ms. Libman.
Good evening. Hello.
Good evening. My understanding is this is a late request for an adjournment to the very next meeting to allow time to continue discussions with staff concerning the conditions.
Yes, but we were actually able to, with great credit to staff, to work it out today. So we're ready to go forward and do not need an adjournment.
All right, very good. We will step you back into the lineup and you will be, unfortunately, last.
Yep.
So we'll see you a little bit later this evening.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right. So with that, then we'll go to, we're done with the adjournments. We're going to come back to application number 1. Ms. Nguyen, if you do see Mr. Daly come back, could you let me know, please? If you see him join us.
Will do.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So we are looking at application number 1, which is for 2653 and 2655 Dawn Street. Mr. Segreto, I understand you're pinch hitting tonight.
Yes, I am. I was called to do a favor for somebody at the 11th hour, so they've asked me to see if I can assist.
All right, terrific. Can you do the statutory declaration, Mr. Segreto?
I called them as well, and I asked them if that was done or not. All I know is that the sign was posted, but I cannot swear to it.
We cannot hear the application if you can't swear to it.
Well, I can't do it then.
Okay. So I'm going to have to adjourn you then, Mr. Segreto, on this application because we can't hear the application without.
I can't swear to it.
I can swear to it.
All right, you will need to come forward, JT, because we don't know who you are. You're not on my list. Are you Jordan Tannis?
Yes, hi, I am.
Aha, you are able to join us. That's terrific. Are you going to come on camera, Mr. Tannis?
Do I have to? Yes.
No, you don't have to. Okay.
I'm just, I'm not able to, I'm sort of in a meeting, so that's the reason why I asked Mr. Segreto to pinch hit for us, but
yeah,
I'm going to step out to deal with the affidavit here. So yes, I can confirm that we did post a sign and we did sign there.
Mr. Tannis, I need to read to you before we can move on. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days by the Planning Act before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear.
All right. So in that case, we will accept that and we can move forward with the application. So I understand we have a couple of housekeeping changes to the application as well. So correction includes an additional sentence regarding the existing easement. So I'm going to read it to you, and Mr. Tannis, if you're still with us, and I'm going to get you to confirm it. The application indicates that there is an existing easement, instrument number 430476, being a transfer easement in favor of Hydro Ottawa and Bell Canada. In agreement, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And additionally, in the purpose statement, we are adding the word dwelling after existing semi-detached dwelling. Are we in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. With that, then we're going to go to questions from the panel on the application. So panel members. Mr. White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question of staff with respect to the conditions of approval that are recommended, and specifically condition number 1 relating to the trees and trust application. I went to the link that's referred to in the condition, and I couldn't find anything in the link that indicated how the process of application, or even if there isn't a process of application under the trees and trust provisions for such urban planting programs, the urban planting situation that we have here. I know in the document that the link took me to refers to rural reforestation program and a schoolyard tree planting grant program, but I don't see anything that sort of ties into what we're trying to do here. Can I just get some background on that? And is that in fact a process that is available under this program?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I may defer to Ms. Young, our infill forester, who can provide the details regarding the Trees and Trust application program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, the Trees and Trust program is a process that the city has to plant trees in urban conditions at no cost to the residents. So they just need to apply, and then the city can plant trees within city land. They can't plant it on private property, but where there's space, they can do that. So all I'm asking is that they apply, and then the city can then evaluate if there is space and it's appropriate for the program. I know there was a tree that was removed here in the past, so it seems like there's space. But the purpose is not to add cost to the applicant here.
Madam Chair, does the city do the actual planting? And
yes, the city does the planting and they provide the trees. The applicant has the ability to choose from a list of trees that they would like.
Okay. Is that available to any member of the public, or is it tied to? Does it have to be tied to a development application like this?
Nope, it's anyone in the public can apply at any time. I think there is a threshold for the number of trees in a given year, but they can be added to a list the next year.
Great, thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, with that then, I do not have anybody on my speakers list. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? If you do, you can just raise your hand and join the panel side of the discussion. And I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So, all right. Any last questions from anyone? Any last comments? Mr. Sagredo, Mr. Tanis, before we go to a vote? Anything, no questions on the conditions?
No.
No? All right. In that case, committee members, all those in favor of granting this consent application? All right, for the record, the application is granted unanimously. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sagredo. We'll see you a little later.
Okay.
Okay. The next one up is application number 2 and 3. Mr. Sagredo, I didn't realize you were up right away.
Hey, you.
There you go. I think it was sewer. And then you have item number 4. So I think we might as well just keep going then with you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So with that then, on number 2 and 3, I need to read to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear.
Okay. Looking at whether or not there's any housekeeping, and I don't see any here. Okay, so I think we can go again. We're not requesting a presentation, Mr. Sagredo. We're going to go straight to questions from the panel members. Anyone? Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question to staff with respect to they've and in the report, I think, highlights the discrepancy between the bylaw minimum requirements for lot width as compared and lot area as compared to lot area. It seems to me that the intent of the minimum, there's a minimum 450 square meter lot area requirement, but there is also the minimum 9 meter lot width requirement. I'm wondering how on this plan would it be possible to ever meet the minimum lot area based on a 9 meter frontage, a 9 meter lot width on this plan of subdivision? It doesn't appear to me that it would be possible to meet that lot area requirement with the lot width of the minimum standard. I mean, here we have 11 meters and we're still well below lot area requirement of 450 square meters. How does that work? How does the bylaw work?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, you are correct, Member White. In this case, the minimum lot width is 9 meters and the minimum lot area is 450, and the two do not jive. You wouldn't be able to have a lot that would comply with that minimum lot area with the width of 9 meters. If the lots were longer, they may have met that requirement. But in terms of our staff's position, our concerns were more related to the tree impacts than the reduced minimum lot area.
Yeah, I guess my problem is we have to have regard to the general purpose and intent of the provision of the zoning bylaw. Not the Planning Act doesn't speak to the tree situation. So I'm having a little bit of difficulty. I'm not saying that I'm going to be opposing this, but I'm having some difficulty in identifying the 343 square meter lot area that's provided by this application as being something that I can consider to meet the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. In fact, be a minimum, a minor zoning bylaw variance. That's my difficulty that I'm dealing with. Is this something? Can I be confident this is something that's probably going to be subject to review in the new process when the new zoning bylaw is reviewed over the next couple of years? I mean, I think it's something that is pretty obvious is inconsistent.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. This is one of the items that will be subject to review. I believe there is also an omnibus that's will be in the next couple of months as well, where the city, the policy team will be reviewing similar infill provisions.
Mr. White, you're on mute.
Thank you. That's the first I've heard of something like that. I'm wondering if this omnibus approach will be dealing with other communities in the city as well, and in particular, one that's on the agenda here later today. It's in the city view area. Is that going to be included in this review, the omnibus?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have any details about specific areas of the city that will be subject to the review or even the exact provisions, but we have been given direction that there are some provisions of the zoning bylaw that will be reevaluated and how they fit together.
Thank you. Madam Chair, it might be useful for us to get a briefing on that at committee of the whole meeting at some point.
I agree completely. So, and I think so rather than wait till the fall for the committee of the whole to get that information, Mr. Belmar, would it be possible just to maybe get something in writing from planning on that if they're moving forward with some sort of omnibus zoning amendment that's going to capture, I guess, ahead of the actual zoning bylaw review, comprehensive zoning bylaw review? Sounds like they're picking a few battles that they're going to take on even before then. So maybe if we could find out what it is, if they've got, I don't know whether they've got a list or they've got some kind of description about what they're planning to do, it would be helpful for us to know what that timeline would be like and what it is they're doing.
Yes, we'll follow up on that, Madam Chair.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Any other questions from the panel, Mr. Hindle?
Yeah, I just had a question, I think, for Ms. Young. It's best directed to, clearly there's a number of questions on this application related to trees. Are you confident in how the conditions are worded now, that you'll be able to get what you need to be able to preserve? I think it's especially the concern of the joint tree or the tree on the neighboring property, and then there's that city tree on the front as well.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I think this is good enough. I am still a little concerned about the driveway next to the city tree, but it sounds like there's not really a way to get around that. So, yeah, I think with the conditions, that should capture everything that I need.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Great. And then I guess related to the squiggle in the driveway, I guess a question for staff. Adding that squiggle, I just want to confirm that it doesn't create a problem in that technically we've got a portion of the driveway that's not leading directly to the garage, or because it is the same width that leads to the garage, we're okay in this instance?
Through you, Madam Chair, the driveway does comply with that provision. There won't be an issue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hindle. Ms. Markovich.
Yes, thank you. It's a question for Mr. Segreto. In your application, you referred to some consultation with a neighbor, discussion around the trees. And I was just wondering if you could say a few words about your wider approach to consultation, any other feedback you may have received in that process, and how you were able to address it.
I had numerous phone calls and emails with I believe her name is Tina Colasante, who owns the commercial property next door to us. She also had a report done by an arborist, which we looked at as well with our arborist as well. And we came in our office with the conclusion that we would do everything we could to protect the tree, because there was no way that they wanted the tree removed. Therefore, what we did is we notched the foundation accordingly to protect it as best we could. I believe it was about 1 meter in depth by about 3 meters in width, and that would impact the size of the garage that we had to reduce it. But we did talk with the abutting neighbor, and I believe my clients, we had a flyer that was sent out to other neighbors as well, the other abutting neighbors that my clients have knocked on the door and spoke with them. That's the information I have for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so I think my question is actually for Ms. Young, if you wouldn't mind. So I'm just trying to think ahead, Ms. Young, with regards to how we might word any approval if we were to do that, move forward with an approval. About the plans, so I'm looking at your condition number 3, the revised wording, and it's very clear that the site plan may require revisions based on. So we're going to tie this generally to plans to the extent that change or revision may be required to ensure the protection of tree number 4 in particular, and 1, or just 4.
Thank you for the question. If the decision would relate to the driveway at all, then I would say both trees 1 and 4 should be included in that.
So let's then, what we'll do is 1 and or 4, and that way it'll cover all both of them. Okay, I just wanted to be sure we're clear on that so that we knew where we're going with any further changes possibly to the site plan. Okay. That is, I think, the extent of my questions. No one else? All right. So looking at the speakers list then, we have no one registered. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak to either the consent application or the minor variance application, or both? Now's your chance. Just raise your hand. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So any final comments or questions, panel members? Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before we take the vote, as I mentioned, I do have some concern with respect to the variance here that's requested with respect to the lot area. But recognizing the fact that the lot width in this case exceeds the bylaw requirement, and in light of the potential, I think I've heard for the possibility of an amendment to that to the zoning provisions here, and which I presume might include a reduction in the lot area requirement, which more reflects the consistency with the minimum lot width provisions. I am not going to object to approval of this application.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Segreto, any comments or questions about the conditions?
No, I'm fine with it all. Thank you.
All All right, well, in that case, I think it's time for a vote. So members of the committee, all those, and I'm on the consent application first, all those in favor of the proposal. All right, for the record, it is unanimously granted. And on the question of the minor variance for lot area, all those in favor? All right, so again, the application is granted and for the record unanimously. So thank you, Mr. Segredo. On to number 4. All right, so I need to do the same thing with you again, which is to read the same thing. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear to be true.
All right, perfect. We do have some housekeeping changes to take care of as part of your application. I am looking specifically to the purpose of the application. So we're going to, in the second sentence, add after lots 2239 and 2240, bracket shown as part 2 on draft 4R plan filed with the applications, close bracket. And then we're going to add after lots 2241 and 2242, bracket shown as part 1 on the draft 4R plan, close bracket. Are you okay with those changes, Mr. Segredo?
Yep.
Okay. And the only 2 more with regards to the reference to relief required for application A00171, we're going to add the words shown as part 1. And for application A00172, we're going to add the word shown as part 2.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So that is done. Again, no presentation. Members of the committee, any questions or comments? Okay, I think we've seen a few applications like this, so no surprise. We are familiar with what's going on here in the neighborhood. So if there's no questions from the panel, I do have 2 registered speakers, Ms. Wilson and Ms. Pratt, if you'd like to come forward. Ms. Wilson, Ms. Pratt. Good evening. Now, am I to start with Ms. Wilson or Ms. Pratt?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Wilson.
Okay, sorry. I just got in here. Okay, let me start first. Okay, good evening, committee chair and committee members. The City View Community Association would like to provide comments for this hearing. Applications for minor variances will satisfy all 4 tests, must satisfy all 4 tests set out under Section 45, bracket 1 of the Act, namely that the requested variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan, maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, are desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure, and are minor in nature. With 3 variances for each property, this application does not maintain the general intent and purpose of our existing R1FF zoning and is not minor. Then we just want to talk about the planner's report for a little bit. And I was wondering if you could put up the picture that we have of 9 Cordova. If you can. If you can't, that's fine. The city planner's report talks about a property at 9 Cordova having a corner yard setback of 3.1 meters from Chippewa. This house is in fact an original build and fronts onto Cordova Street and has 6.1 meters setback from Chippewa. So we're just wondering what the planner meant by that. And the diagram that we provided has the measurement of 6.1 from the side of the house to Chippewa. So I don't know why that was used in there as an example of something that's under 4.5. That's one of our questions. The trees, we agree with the planner and the forester that the mature, healthy tree on the city's right-of-way should and can be protected. The builder is proposing that a slightly curved, narrow driveway and construction protection will allow this tree to survive. And again, I have a question about that, just that was brought up from the last one that was in here. Just the driveway, the squiggly driveway, there's another squiggly driveway in this one here. And you were saying that it should line up with the garage. If it doesn't line up with the garage, what does that mean? Because this one doesn't quite line up with the garage. So that's another question. However, it has been suggested that by facing this new build onto Cordova Avenue, where there is already a driveway egress, the future health of this tree would be maximized. So if they just kept the driveway on Cordova, which is an option, it could be could save that driveway in the front and save that tree. In reviewing the property, we noticed that the aggregate stones have been piled several feet from the trunk of this red maple tree, so we are concerned that the health of this tree is already being compromised. So you can see in the picture there that there is all this stuff is being piled at the bottom of this tree. So if you're trying to protect a tree, you don't dump stuff around it like that. Also, the site plans show the existing hedge of trees along Cordova Avenue. Are these to be removed? The front part will be in the corner sight line triangle, which would indicate removal. Several shrubs and new trees are shown to be added to the rear. Are these trees that the planner indicates will enhance the streetscape on Cordova? If so, they should be extended along the entire length of the side of this new build. The City View Community Association would consider this a preferred streetscape than fencing. A new fence has been installed along Cordova adjacent to this property, the one at 102 Granton. And you can see in the next picture that there's this big long fence line. And if we add it, that one there, if we add it to the next house, 101 Chippewa, we're gonna have this great big long stretch of fence line. It would be poor planning to allow an additional 100 feet of fencing along Cordova, not a good, inviting, or attractive streetscape for collector roads and our only sidewalk. Also, this does not fit the character of the neighborhood. Another reason that this building should front onto Cordova. We are unsure whether the proposed new tree can be planted on the city right of way. As we've been advised in the past, that because of our ditch drainage system, trees cannot be planted in this area. If the setbacks from Cordova were reduced, a proper area for streetscaping and tree planting could be available. And we're not sure about that because we're not sure with the sidewalks there, how the ditch system works. So I'll let Jill take over from this point. I just would like to make another comment tonight. This is coming from Jill and I at the City View Community Association. And we just want you to know that we're very, very frustrated with how all of this stuff is working, how the Committee of Adjustment, and it's not your fault, but how things are being ruled on. And when we do win something, we go to OLT and we lose it there. And if we lose something here, we take it to OLT and we lose it there. So there's no winning for us. And we put a lot of time and effort into trying to keep our community the way it should be for the people in this community. And we're just pedaling backwards. And it's very, very frustrating for us to come here every 2 weeks to say all of these things that we know and that our community is telling us that are adverse effects on them, but having nobody ever listen to us. So I'm sorry I had to say that, but I've had a really frustrating day. We got an OLT result from 2 David Drive, and of course we lost it. So they're going to build on that 2 David Drive, and it's ludicrous. Anyway, that's my saying for the night. Go ahead, Jill.
Jill, Ms. Pratt, you are on mute. Do you want to start over? You're still on mute.
Do you want me to do it?
Is there a way that we can unmute? No, I can't do anything. I'm from my end, sorry.
I can do the rest of it for you, Jill. Okay. There's just a few other discrepancies that we noticed. The site plan shows a site plan map in the upper left-hand corner and a title that is not for this property, but for previous one on Tower Road. And we hope that the rest of the data for this application is correct. This seems to happen quite often. The infrastructure. The City of View Community Association is always concerned with the lack of infrastructure here to support these infills. The Committee of Adjustment suggested that we could see improvements in our ditch storm sewer system included in the infrastructure master plan. The City of View Community Association has provided comments on this and another dozen city engagement projects, including the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. But we are yet to see the city accept our suggestions or have any improvements to our community included. Again, more frustration. From the infrastructure master plan, the system design criteria established in the infrastructure master plan are intended to ensure that current city design and level of service guidelines can be met in the future neighborhoods, They are not intended to achieve improvements to levels of service in existing development areas. So I guess we're just whatever out of luck, because we're sitting here in the middle of the city with, we're not new, we're not too old, but we're just nothing. Anyway, frustration again. According to the city, Pinecrest Creek is at its capacity, so they cannot direct our stormwater there. Strange, considering that we were here before College Square, before Algonquin College even, before the expansions at Algonquin College, before the proposed LRT stormwater pond, and before other developments in this area like Center Point and all the other areas around. Because we have been identified as a community that will be intensified, the city has to address our stormwater issues. Instead, they will be redigging and grading all of the ditches in City View. Aren't we lucky? Including driveways and front yards of all of these infills. So at each committee of adjustment hearing, the City View Community Association has asked that this be part of the conditions for construction here. But now we learn that our tax dollars will be used to dig these fronts and reinstate ditches and culverts under driveways. So the new development, they get off the hook, they don't have to do it, but the city will come in and pay for it so that it gets done properly. But we suggest that Mr. Segreto advises future clients about this new initiative, because they will be doing that. They will be coming in and digging ditches on these new flat properties and digging up their driveways and putting culverts underneath. So just an FYI. And that's it for us for the night. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wilson. I think the committee does appreciate the time that you're taking, but we also totally recognize the frustration that you must be feeling through all this. What really is, in all of the comments that you made, the one that I think is the most disappointing for me is the comments about the infrastructure master plan. So we have tried to the extent possible to ensure that planning staff through the infrastructure master plan studies and reviews would look very specifically at City View. And as you know, there's a proposal, we don't know when, we haven't seen the timelines for a secondary plan. Surely to goodness, it makes sense to marry the infrastructure part with that secondary planning process as we move forward. So all that we can do at this point, so a couple of things. Ms. Wilson, do you have anything in writing that you can share with us that essentially says you get at the best case scenario is you're getting, your ditches reconfigured or improved? If you can provide that information to us, that would be very helpful. And I would ask you to send it directly to Mr. Belmar. And then maybe we can do a follow-up to find out exactly what it is that, so that we understand it as well. and maybe have discussions with planning or infrastructure staff about it. Because surely we know that that's been an issue for you all along, and we have been waiting for this to be dealt with. And if they're not going to deal with it, then we definitely need to find out why. On some of the other questions that you raised, I'm just going to go back to just a moment to yes, the rock pile, the aggregate pile next to the tree. Mr. Segreto, can you please tell us a little bit about that? What's that about?
You know, I'm going to be very honest with you. I can't tell you anything about that. All I know is that the gentleman, the owners built the house at 103, I believe a year or so, or they have just completed it. So it must be some rubble left over from that house, but I have no idea what that is about. Again, I can ask them to remove it and make sure that it's clean around there, but I guess it was during construction that they left some gravel there.
Yeah, I suspect that that's not the way that they're supposed to be dealing with leftover aggregate. Ms. Young, can you please, need a question from you then. In a situation like this where we've got somebody who's clearly disposed of maybe additional aggregate incorrectly, what can the city do about that? Would you be able to send somebody out, and is there anything we can do about it? I guess that's the long and short of it.
I can certainly request that an inspector go take a look at it, and fines could be issued under the bylaw if it's not removed. So yes, I will definitely ask my colleagues to go take a look.
All right, okay. And Ms. Wilson, if we need your help in identifying exactly where that's at, maybe we'll be in touch with you then, or Ms. Young will be in touch with you. Okay, the other question you had is with regards to the driveway line up with the garage. So I guess, is it Ms. Kelly? Ms. Kelly, do you want to explain that one just so that we can clear that one up?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. And I just want to make sure I understood the question correctly. Was it in relation to the driveway and garage on part 2? So the new detached dwelling, Ms. Wilson?
Yes, it was. And it was because the hearing just before us, we were talking about a squiggly driveway there. And I don't know if it was Member White or Hindle that said that they had to line up with the garage. So I'm just wondering about that, that's all.
Right, so as proposed, they are meeting the maximum width that's permitted under the zoning bylaw. In this case, the squiggle or the hatched is required to minimize impacts to the tree. I think the best option would be to have a straight driveway. But in this case, it does meet the requirements for the zoning bylaw and does minimize impacts to the critical root zone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
The other question we had was 9 Cordova too.
Yeah, that was I was about to go to that one. So yes, I'm kind of working back from your list. Yeah, so I'm seeing this on, well, the report page isn't numbered, but literally with regards to reduced corner side yard setback, that discussion paragraph, you do identify, I think it's 102 Graton Avenue having a corner side yard setback of approximately 3.14 meters. And 9 Cordova has a corner side yard setback of 3.5.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So these are approximate setbacks based on our aerial imagery and building envelopes that we see on Geo Ottawa. And the setback is measured from the closest front wall of the building to the property line. So I just double checked it now. And I can confirm, again, approximate based on our imagery. So for 9 Cordova, it would be 3.4, 3.5 for the setback from Cordova. And then same for 102 Granton, 3.1, 3.2. And so that's based on the information that we have on hand on our Geo Ottawa system.
Can I just say one thing? That house that's on Cordova, the front of that house is on Cordova. So wouldn't the corner side yard setback be between the house and Chippewa? Like we measured it?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. I should have clarified in my report. I was referring to the front yard setback in that case, as it was comparable in terms of how it would be set back from Cordova to line up in that case. So that was the intent of my comparison there.
All right, does that help, Ms. Wilson?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it makes more sense that when you say it that way. It's not a corner side yard setback, it's a front yard setback. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, was there any, have I missed anything? I thought I had covered most of them. I think so. All right.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. White, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Here I go again. I've shared, and I expressed it many times, I share the frustrations of the community association with the fact that the city has not carried out a proper community inclusive, comprehensive review of the zoning bylaw in this community. The provisions of this bylaw were adopted in 1962. There hasn't been any significant changes or review of that zoning bylaw since that time. However, in the last, and in fact, up until the last 8 or 9 years, this committee did not entertain the extent of minor variances in lot width and lot area that we've seen today. And since I've joined this committee that I've seen, it's my position again that these applications are not consistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw as it was originally adopted and as it continues to exist today. It's long overdue that these provisions be reviewed in light of the provisions of the official plan and the new initiatives under the official plan with respect to intensification. I think we discussed the issues with engineering problems, infrastructure problems in this area. I noticed that this street in particular has no significant ditching. If there were ditches there, they were filled in. I'm wondering how weeping tile systems work in these circumstances. I'm assuming that these properties are drained with a weeping tile system, and I'm wondering how that possibly works in this situation. There's so many things in this community that need to be looked at through a proper review. Haven't been done. However, there's been with the decisions that are being made by our committee, the doubling of density in the area. I don't believe that it's consistent with what the intent of the zoning bylaw is today. And on that basis, I'll just have to dissent on this application.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Wilson, I'm going to give you a minute because I need to make a call out to anybody else.
Okay, just a quick question. We forgot to ask about cash in lieu. The parkland dedication bylaw has been passed, I think, and cash in lieu is supposed to be collected on building permits now. Do you know if this property will have cash in lieu attached to it?
I have no idea. Ms. Kelly?
Through you, Madam Chair, I did inquire about how the new park dedication bylaw would affect City View in particular, because I am aware of the concerns of the community. What I was told was I don't have any information in terms of whether we can request it as part of the consent, but I could provide more information on whether that would be requested at building permit stage, if that would help later this week.
Actually, Ms. Kelly, that would be helpful if you could find that out for us, please, because if there's now a mechanism for that to be picked up, even though we can't do that, we don't have a consent application, then great. So yes, do that for us. Okay, Mr. White, I was going to try and close off the hearing if that's okay first. All right, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? All right, I'm not seeing anybody else come forward. So Mr. White, did you have a comment? Nope, you're okay. All right. So I don't think there's anything else in terms of questions that I have. Anybody else for Mrs. Segreto or anyone else?
I'm
No,
a little,
Mrs. Segreto.
I am a little confused. It says here on condition number 1 that there is cash in lieu that they're asking for. Is this something that has been passed, or is it being considered, or what is the story? It is a minor variance. It's not a severance, right?
No, but so the issue is then how do we pick up cash in lieu for those lots that are being created without,
Okay.
So it sounds like the bylaw may now allow for the building permit process to be that trigger.
Okay. Okay. I get it. All right. All right.
We just need to find out whether that's official or not at this point, and Ms. Kelly will find out for us. So that's
Fair
good.
enough. Fair enough.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we go to a vote? All right, then panel members, all those in favor of this minor variance application? All right, so we have 3 members who are willing to approve the application, with Mr. White dissenting for the reasons that he provided earlier. So with that, then, Mr. Segreto, I don't think we need more from you, but we do have an awful lot that we will try to look into for Ms. Wilson and Ms. Pratt and see if we can't get some answers for them. And then we'll try and do that not through a hearing venue. Ms. Wilson or Ms. Pratt will try and do that if we can get committee staff to simply provide you that information electronically. So, all right, okay. So we're on to the next application. By the way, is Nguyen?
Yes.
Is Mr. Daly around?
He is now.
Okay. Let's deal with this then before we go on to application number 5. So Mr. Daly, on 257 Lisgar Street, request for adjournment. Mr. Daly, you've got your, okay. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Okay, so my understanding is that there's a request for both by yourself and by planning staff for an adjournment of this application. And I believe, yeah, so we can talk about dates, but am I correct so far?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so this is a situation where the application is premature, given the fact that you're dealing with another planning application under the Planning Act. And what we want to do is ensure that everything catches up so that by the time we see you again, we know that we're no longer premature and that the zoning has in fact been approved and is in full force and effect. So that brings us to the date issue. So on this, is it Ms. Kelly? So Ms. Kelly, the committee was trying to think about what kind of date we might be able to go to. So September 21st, I believe, was requested by you, Mr. Daly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The question becomes, are we through the appeal period? So assuming that, is it August 25th, I believe, council, or 24th, the council is supposed to be dealing with the zoning amendment. Will we be through the appeal period by September 21st?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the next council meeting is actually August 31st. If council approves the zoning bylaw amendment as recommended by Planning Committee, the 20-day appeal period, I believe, will bring us to, if I'm not mistaken, just counting quickly, I believe it will bring us to September 20th.
Boy, that's close. It works, but it's close. Okay. That's all we really wanted to confirm then, Ms. Kelly. So in terms of dates, I think panel members, don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you good with September 21st if we were to adjourn to that date? Okay. Mr. White?
Madam Chair, the only problem is that what happens if there was, I mean, I'm not familiar with the background of the application, but for zoning, but if there's an appeal, that might create some issue, but I suppose we can deal with that as a deferral or an adjournment, further adjournment at that time if that event happens.
I think that's the best course. All right. Okay, so with that, then, if we're looking at September 21st, did we have any speakers for this item? Don't believe we did. Number 11. All right. So I do need to ask, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this proposal to adjourn the application number 11 for 257 Lisgar Street to September 21st? Now's your chance. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so then we need to go to a vote. Panel members, all those in favor of the adjournment to September 21st. Okay, for the record, that adjournment is unanimous. We'll see you back, Mr. Daly, in September.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now we're off to number 5. And that is for 527 Chapel Street. Looking for the agent. Silbert, owners of the property. So Mr. and Mrs. Silbert. Hello. Hi, how are you?
Good, you?
Oh, not too bad. So you got your hands full.
trying to extend bedtime tonight. So
Okay,
we're happy we're only number 5.
All right, so I got to do a couple of things with you before we hear your application. So just bear with me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I do so swear.
I swear.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we also have a housekeeping change to your notice. So under the purpose of the application, this is how, I'm going to read it to you and you can just confirm. The owners want to construct a new detached dwelling with a secondary dwelling unit contained in the basement on the property, as shown on the plans filed with the Committee of Adjustment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, and I believe that is it. All right, no presentation needed this evening. Just going to go straight to questions from the committee. Anyone? Mr. Hindle.
I just had a quick question on parking. Is the intention that you're going to continue the existing kind of parking setup that you have now with shared access with the neighbor and parking in the rear, or are you getting rid of parking as part of this?
No, we are both the neighbor and the applicant. So with the cooperation of the previous owner of the home, we built a semi-detached garage at the back, and semi-detached being it's we each have a side of the garage that's detached at the back of the driveway. So we'll be maintaining that. Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's set up.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Just a quick question then, Mr. Silbert, about consultation with your neighbors, because we do have a number of comments that have come in from folks that are, I think, adjacent to, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell me a little bit about how you went about consulting with your neighbors?
Yeah, so when we started, been a community member for a while. I sat on the Action Sandy Hill board. I know how this works. So I started with reaching out to my neighbors. We did a presentation to them a couple of months ago with our plans that we were seeking to go to committee with. We've been trying to work with those neighbors that had issues, working through those. We also, through the formal process here, we've received comments from them directly, and we've tried our best to address those. Through revisions to the plans, we've done a couple just tweaks to help alleviate some issues around tree protection and maintain the beautiful tree that's in our neighbor Nicole's yard in the backyard, which will provide us great shade, and we're excited for it to keep, and then trying to alleviate other issues if anyone had any concerns. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Just, was it really changes to the site plan related to just the trees? Was there anything else you did with regards to the, you know, because you're asking for a variance to the height? So anything, like I understand you have a step back, maybe was that part of your negotiation?
Yeah. So the front yard setback is actually matching with the existing houses. And so on the third floor, we're setting back to what the prescribed setback, 4.5 meters, although it's not the character of the street. We are going to step back to the prescribed amount on that third floor to try and sort of tear back the building and sort of hides your height a little bit by tearing it back. We removed the deck in the back, which had a foundation just for critical root zones around the big tree in the backyard. Our staircase was slightly encroaching on the front, so we had to shorten that. Our front porch was slightly encroaching. That we did revolve that back, and we had to do some confirmation around the softscaping minimums that were met, but we were there. Just the information wasn't provided. So those were the adjustments that were made. We tried to explain to neighbors why the request for the variance on the height. We're looking for a secondary dwelling unit, hoping to have a student or caregiver that could stay in the basement for younger years when we have kids. So that's why we're looking for the secondary dwelling unit. And we like to have some good light for them. Just the way that the house is long and skinny, we not a lot of options. So we're trying to get that good front light in the front of the house.
All right. Okay. Thank you. You actually answered my second question while you were at it, so that's good. All right. No one else with any questions? I'm going to go to members of the public at this point, and I do believe we have a registered speaker, Ms. Girard.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Yes.
The floor is yours. You can provide any comments or ask any questions you would like.
Yes, I do have additional comments. I do have a problem with the application because taken together, the minor variances sought by the applicant would lead to the construction of an oversized, massive building. And as such, it can be considered to be too important to be viewed as minor variances. As we all know, the zoning bylaw prescribes front, rear, side yard setbacks, building size, height, and use. And the variances must be considered in light of their of what's currently authorized under the bylaw, applicable in R4, R4U, B480 zone, as well as the ensuing results. What I'm driving at is, taken together, although each variance in size is not large, the impact on the overall on the overall size of the building is problematic, is of concern. The first variance sought, the front yard setback, reducing it from 46 to 225 would be one of the changes, resulting in a construction of vastly larger building than is currently in place, i.e. nearly 3 times the size of the existing building, which is 1,078 square feet. Although I'm saying approximately, the new building would be approximately estimated at the 3,000 square feet. Now, this is not, it's nowhere provided expressly in the application. That information is not provided, but it's a rough estimation, and perhaps the applicant can speak further to that. But this deals with the front yard setback. This, together with the variance, regarding the variance to the height, currently, as we all know, the allowed height for a detached family dwelling is 10 meters. This height limit was adopted 2 years ago, following extensive consultation. And as opposed to the 11 meter that is mentioned in the applicant refers to, indeed, 4 or 5 buildings on the same block at 11 meters. But it must be well noted that this predates the current rule of 10 meters for detached family dwellings, which was adopted barely 2 years ago, precisely to address overbuilding, such as what happened at 533 Chapel. And that followed an extensive R4 review. Together, together with the reduced front yard setback, the increased height is liable to result in a mastodon. That's what is of major concern to me. In fact, the building would be larger than the existing structure next door at 525 Chapel, where Jeremy and Jessica live. Because 525 Chapel is a 2,186 square feet structure. It does not address the mass, but it gives us an idea as to the size. So in addition, according to plans, the proposed new construction would extend further into the further east in the rear yard. And as such, it would create a windowless barrier effect between the two properties, keeping in mind that the 1.83 wall-to-wall distance between the two constructions means they're very close to one another. During the pre-consult, the issue of height and square footage was raised. It was noted an approximate size of 3,000 square feet for the new structure, as we mentioned earlier, 3 times the current structure. And in addition, the ceiling heights was noticed as being 10 feet at ground level and on 3rd floor and 9 feet on the 2nd floor, as well as the elevated basement height. A larger building, as we all know, triggers issues of massiveness, bulk, scale. It's liable to adversely impact on abutting properties in terms of light, privacy, views. In the case at hand, with the front and it's provided according to plans, there would be front and rear terraces plus a hot tub on the 3rd floor, a rear terrace on the 2nd floor, and a rear deck at ground level. This is with respect to views. With respect to privacy, well, not privacy. I'm sorry. This deals with privacy, but in terms of light, to the best of my knowledge, no sun or shade study was conducted for the proposed development. As the immediate neighbor to the south, living in a 2-story detached dwelling, I fear that the new structure will be overbearing and that I'll end up squeezed between 2 towers. The current one at 533 with 3,076 square feet and 527 of similar dimensions. Now, the documents filed with the application do not enable the visualization to visualize the actual resulting mass. But computer or actual modeling would help in dramatizing both the existing as of right building and the proposed development, highlighting the comparative effects on adjoining homes such as mine. The question which arises is, could the applicant's needs, requirements, or legit aspiration, could they be met within the limits of the existing bylaws? Considering the anticipated number of occupants, is there a need for a 3-fold increase in floor space compared to the existing dwelling?
You've got maybe
I'll give
you another minute because I think typically it's a 5-minute. So
fine. I submit that at a minimum, the design should be modified. Some part of the proposed structure could be reduced in mass or height to minimize adverse impact on my property while maintaining compatibility with the built form and character of the neighborhood. I note the applicant's personal undertaking with respect to the flat rooftop, to the effect that there would be no, the design would not allow access to the rooftop access structure or amenity area on the flat rooftop. Finally, in regards to compliance with established physical character of the streetscape, the applicant would have to provide further details with respect to finishing materials so as to ensure that we achieve harmonization with the built-in character of the
That's not something the committee can ask for.
No,
We're not
okay.
into the building materials side of things.
All right, thank
We're
you.
dealing with relief from the zoning bylaw. So,
So anyway, one must, my last comment would be that one must not underestimate the lasting consequences of allowing such a massive construction. Due consideration must be given to the adverse impact of the proposed construction on adjoining properties, and more generally, its effect on the neighboring community. Care should be taken to avoid creating a precedent which could be used subsequently by future applicants. Respectfully submitted.
thank you. All right, so just to get at one of your questions, I'm going to need Ms. Kelly's help for a moment, but I just wanted, Madame Girard, there's two minor variances. That's all that's been requested. So in every other respect, the proposal meets the zoning standards. But I do want to talk with Ms. Kelly for just a minute, because forgive me, because I'm working off my paper copy tonight, which has very tiny writing and I can't actually see the numbers. But my question to you is, I know what we're trying to achieve with the first variance with respect to the reduction in the front yard, because we want to make sure that we have a streetscape that makes some sense, right? So that we don't have a house that's somehow completely backed up from what else is on the street. I used to live on Chapel Street, so I know Chapel Street very well. Ooh. And there's actually, the houses are nice and close to the street, which is nice. It really gives it a very nice community feel. But so Ms. Kelly, my question to you then is, there's no request for reduction in the rear yard setback. But that said, are we at the limit? So is it, like, I'm trying to see what the number is here, but what is the rear yard setback and what's being proposed? So how much?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So there's two pieces here. So the first piece is the zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback. So in this case, the minimum rear yard setback that's required is 9.15 meters. And what's being provided is 9.39. So they do exceed the setback. In addition, the zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard area, and that kind of relates to the rear yard setback. So the minimum rear yard area that's required is 25% of the lot area. And again, approximately they're exceeding that. They're providing 83.1 square meters.
What percentage is that?
Oh, sorry. And sorry, my mistake. So what they're required to provide is 67.5 square meters, and they're providing 83.1 square meters.
All right. So the reality, though, is that in terms of building envelopes, by having a reduced front yard, and even though they're providing the rear yard setback, it doesn't make up for the additional frontage that they're getting. So I just wanted to be clear on that, right? So the idea being that the difference is what, about 2 meters, I guess, 2.11, right? So that's the difference. Okay, so in the rear, even though it's more generous than the minimum, it's still, so okay, so there is a gain in terms of the building envelope length, I guess, into the, okay, so I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay, and then on the building height, remind me, what does the zoning bylaw require for other forms of housing, not single family? So if I wanted to do a semi-detached or I wanted to do a triplex, what would my building height be?
I can pull that up, Madam Chair, quickly. But for single detached, it is 10 meters. Just give me a moment.
Yeah, Ms. Girard, and the reason I ask is because Madame Girard pointed to 2 years ago the establishment of a very clear 10-meter maximum for single-family dwellings, but I just want to see if it was made to apply to everything else, because my understanding is that it's a triplex that's to the north of this property, right?
I can speak to that if you'd allow me.
Yes, Mr. Schulberg, go ahead.
The zoning change was always 11 meters on the street. 2 years ago, they made a change to single family and duplexes. So triplexes, low-rise apartments would all be allowed to be 11 meters. The property we live in at 525 Chapel is a duplex that is under the old rules. It's 11 meters. This building will actually be shorter than it by 0.2 meters. The building to the south of Miss Nicole, 533 Chapel, is a duplex built under the old rules. It's 11 meters with a peaked roof, so the building actually exceeds 11 meters. It's the midpoint of the roof at 11 meters. To the south of that is 535 Chapel, which is being proposed at 11 meters. Is that because it's a low-rise apartment building?
So, Mr. Silver, did I hear you say that the existing duplex on the property today is already above the 10.8?
The property we live in, which is next door at 525 Chapel on the other side of the driveway, is a duplex. I'm currently sitting in it. That's 11 meters. It was built under the old rules. This is 527 on the other side of the driveway. So this building will be shorter than the adjacent building.
So, all right, just to be clear, it's not that you're saying that the duplex was at 11 meters. It's that it's actually hits 11 meters in height.
525 Chapel is a duplex. It's built with a flat roof at 11 meters.
Thank you.
533 Chapel is a duplex that's a couple doors down. It's got a peaked roof. So it's the midpoint of the peaked roof is 11. So it actually exceeds 11 meters, but it's calculated at the midpoint. That's how you do height on a peaked roof.
All right.
There's multiple buildings on either side of Nicole that are at 11 meters and both duplexes.
I hadn't appreciated that the existing structure that's being replaced is actually higher than what you're proposing to do. So that's interesting.
I have a really good chart in my presentation if you'd allow me to bring that.
Actually, you know what? I don't think it's necessary. I'm going to get Ms. Kelly just to confirm everything that you've just said. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. So in terms of other forms of housing, 3-unit stacked low-rise apartments would be 11 meters. Everything else, including detached, linked, semi-detached, long semi, duplex, is 10 meters.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. All right. Any other questions for Ms. Girard at this point from the panel members? Because I'll go on. Mr. White.
Question to staff. Can I get a rationale for the difference in the height limits? 1 meter? What's the reason for that?
Sorry, I think I caught that. I think you're asking for the rationale.
I'm asking.
You're asking staff. Yes.
And the bylaw, why do we have 1 meter difference between the various housing types? I don't understand.
To the best of my knowledge.
Ms. Girard, we're asking staff. So, Ms. Kelly, the floor is yours, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Member White, it's my understanding that the 10 meters is a recent amendment. I believe it came in 2 years ago. The intent of it was to limit the height of detached dwellings. In terms of why certain housing types were permitted at the 11 meters versus the 10, I don't have an explicit answer. I can point to the official plan direction, which explicitly says that building heights cannot exceed 4 stories. And the official plan defines 4 stories as approximately 3 meters. So with the proposed increase in height, the proposal is still under 4 stories and meets that intent, being to be a low rise form of housing.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kelly. I think we're going to make a zoning bylaw expert out of you by the time we're done. Okay, all right. I am going to call on, is there anyone else in the audience? Ms. Girard was the only person on my list, but if there's somebody out there who would like to speak to this application, either for or against, now's your chance.
Well, I wanted to reiterate the fact that my concern has to do with the resulting.
Yes, Ms. Giron, we did hear from you already. I
Okay.
just really was hoping to hear
Thank
from
you.
anybody else at this point. So, but I'm not seeing anybody. So at this point, I'm going to close the public consultation part of the hearing down so that we can go to deliberation of the panel members at this point. So does anybody have any additional questions that they may want to ask staff on anything before we move forward? Is there anything to do with trees? I haven't even had a chance to see whether or not, yeah, okay, so there is something to do with trees on this with regards to the removal of 2 private trees. All right. One question for you, Ms. Kelly, then. I did see that the site plan was revised to remove the rear deck with stairs on piers to reduce the excavation of the critical root zone. So do we have a revised plan that shows that to ensure that when we approve the plan, the rear deck is not there?
For you, Madam Chair, I sent the revised site plan to the committee coordinator, I believe on Friday of last week. I can provide the date of the revised site plan if that's helpful for now.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure it was there. It's because I'm looking at the one that came with the report, of course, because that's what's in front of me. But I just wanted to confirm that we did have the revisions to that. So when when we approve it, we approve the revised. Okay, so that's good. Any other? Okay, that was the only questions I had with regards to the trees. Anybody have any tree concerns or questions? Okay. So with that, then I think members were ready to go to a vote on these 2 minor variances. I mean, it's not a lot of relief being requested from the zoning bylaw. So all those in favor of the application? All right. So the application is granted, and for the record, it's unanimous. So you do have an approval of your application, Mr. and Mrs. Silbert. And I would just, all I can say is obviously there are some of your neighbors who have concerns, and maybe there's a way for you to continue dialoguing with them to see whether or not even additional improvements can be made. So the approval is tied to the revised plans, the rear deck. And with that, wish you good luck. Thank you very much. And Madame Girard, merci pour vos commentaires. C'est apprécié. All right. I think we're on to application number 8 at this point. Application number 8 is for 2300 Fox Crescent. And I'm looking for, I believe, I just want to check this to be sure I have the right person. Right, so Ms. Shahzada.
Yes.
Shahzada, thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. So I think what I need to start with for you then is the notice, the sign posting. Do you solemnly swear affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I swear.
Okay. Now there's no housekeeping changes required to your application, and we're not going to request a presentation from you. So I'm going to throw it open to the committee members to ask questions at this point. Anyone? Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for maybe the applicant, and maybe staff might be able to comment on it. I'm just a little bit concerned with the configuration of the lot, and particularly in particular part 1 on the plan. I haven't seen any conceptual development plan here, but I'm wondering if staff and or the applicant can provide information on the ability to construct a dwelling unit on that part 1 in conformity with the zoning bylaw in terms of buildable area and particularly setback requirements, etc., from the property lines. It's a an odd shaped parcel, and I'm just want to make, I think we should be confident that if we're approving it, that that a unit can be built in conformity with the zoning bylaw, not requiring any minor variances.
Through you, Madam Chair, the parcel can be developed with a building with a square footprint of just under 200 square meters as of right. So following all of the setbacks in terms of front yard setback, interior side yard setbacks, rear yard setback, and rear yard area, the allowable building footprint would be just under 200 square meters.
Madam Chair, just wondering if staff's satisfied with that information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I actually had an inquiry from one of the committee coordinators on behalf of residents who had a similar question related to rear yard setbacks. And so I did the calculations, and for each property based on the rear yard setback requirements under section 144. And there's quite a bit of room there objectively. The rear yard setbacks are quite generous, and that still leaves a pretty significant buildable lot area, as the agent indicated.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Ms. Clarizero, just to follow up on that, that would include a driveway, right? Because that kind of, so it's not just the building envelope, it's getting a driveway in. And that was what kind of concerned me, is how do you, and did you take that into account in your review?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, I didn't go into extreme detail trying to figure out where exactly a driveway could be located on the lot, but the minimum lot width and area, they all comply with the minimum required under the bylaws. So it's up to the applicant to make sure that they can comply or request additional variances. But I had no concerns with the lot width and being able to get a driveway in there. Certainly not in part one either. I think part one is going to be probably a creative design exercise, but I think it can still be done. Yeah, I think given how deep the setback is, the lot's still going to be quite irregular, but there's you're getting pretty far away from that the point, the rear. There's not really a rear lot line. There's the rear point, but the frontage on Mountain View is pretty generous, and yeah, I don't see an issue. I mean, a single car. Parking's not required, so, but a single car garage could certainly be accommodated on the lot.
Oh, and no parking is required on any of this?
I'm fairly certain. I'll have to double check. I'm fairly certain it's an area X, but maybe don't quote me on that one. I can double check. But
it's not all that important, but it would be. I mean, it completely negates the whole discussion about a driveway if there's no parking required, right? So,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else from anyone before I go to our members of the public? We don't have any registered speakers. Is there anyone out in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? If you do, just raise your hand and you can be brought in by the coordinators. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. All right, so Ms. Shah, sorry, how do you pronounce her name?
Shahzadeh.
Shahzadeh, thank you. As there's a number of conditions attached to your, so any concerns about any of that?
I would just ask if we can remove condition number 7 regarding the corner site triangle, since all 3 proposed lots are interior lots. And given the shape of the lot, it is already curved, so I don't see how a 3x3 corner site triangle can be taken from the lot.
All right, so we're going to need to have Ms. Clarizero back, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I looked into this one, and I've been chatting with bylaw interpreters and zoning plan examiners. I haven't had a chance to get in touch with the engineer who provided the condition. However, I'll note that the condition, he would have had to have seen the site plan and the draft 4R, rather the draft 4R, not the site plan, in order to determine that there was a potential corner lot in order to impose that condition. So what I think he's done, the engineer who provided the report, what I think they've done is measure the angle on the draft 4R. So the definition of a corner lot under the zoning bylaw is, I have the exact definition somewhere, but it's the intersection of two streets or one street around a corner, and the interior angle cannot be, it's anything under 135 degrees for the interior angle. So I measured the interior angle of that corner and I got 127 degrees. So I think that's where the engineer determined that it was a corner lot. That being said, I drew a 3-meter site triangle the way I interpreted it on GeoWattlewa on an aerial photo, roughly to see where it was. And it's not even within the lot line. So it's a little bit misleading, this requirement. In speaking with the zoning plan examiners, they sort of determined that there was, because it's a curved line, that the proposed lot line between parts 1 and 2 is right at the intersection of the Fox and Mountain View. So they're sort of the mind that it might be a continuous frontage and not a corner lot, but I just based it on the interior angle, which is what the definition says under the bylaw. I assume that's what the engineer meant. If you're interested, I did a little, like I took a screen grab of GeoWattlewa showing the site triangle overlaid, but.
No, I think what I'm trying to figure out at this point then is, so it's definitely the surveys mapping branch of the city who makes a call on these things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all I would do then is maybe the way this condition needs to be worded is that that has to be confirmed, that the requirement needs to be confirmed. And because it doesn't sound like there's a lot of clarity around it. And if it applies, then it has to be to the satisfaction of, how about we do it that way?
Okay.
All right. So if we're going to do that, then I'm looking at the wording. It's the owner convey. So what we want to actually say is that the owner or the city, should it be the mapping? Should it be actually that the surveys and mapping branch of the city confirm requirement for a 3x3 corner site triangle, and in the event that it is found to meet whatever the standards, the criteria, then the owner will convey the 3. How about we do it that way? So we just have an opening sentence that says that the surveys and mapping branch will confirm the requirement for a site triangle. And then upon confirmation, the owner will then convey. How about we do that? Does that work a little bit better?
Yes, I'm comfortable with that.
All right. So I'm just going to have to make a note to myself to make sure I look at that condition when it comes through on the decision. All right. Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that was it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. In that case, I think we're ready for a vote. Members of the committee, all those in favor of the application? All right, so for the record, the consents are unanimously granted by the committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
good luck.
Have a good evening.
All right, you too. Bye now. All right, last but not least, back to Selkirk, looking for Ms. Libman, who I think has been with us, waiting patiently all along.
Hello.
Hello, I'm going to read to you, Ms. Libman. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the
I
notice?
actually, Madam Chair, I submitted a signed statutory declaration this morning to Ms. Nguyen.
I will need Ms. Nguyen. Can you confirm that for me, please?
Madam Chair, I can confirm that I did receive the statutory declaration this morning.
And it's in the form and everything that it needs to be, because sometimes we receive them and they're not valid.
Yes, it is.
All right, perfect. In which case we will skip that part. Let's go to the public notice. There is a housekeeping amendment according to staff. So it seems to be just a problem with some numbering in terms of the order. So instead of 65.57, it's in fact 65.67. Right?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So actually 50 to 60. Okay. With that, then we don't need a presentation on this unless members would like one, but I don't think we talked about going to one. We can go straight to questions then. Does any of the members have any questions for Mr. Hindendale? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just curious what the status of the site plan for this application is.
I think it's very close to approval for phase 1.
Phase 1 would represent part 2?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And it's
And at this
it's also part 1 on the plan, which is not part of this application because it's a separate PIN.
Okay. So that's kind of the large piece further to the east then, I guess.
Yes, that's right.
And then at this stage, we're not doing any reciprocal easements for access or anything like that?
No, so this is simply for financing at this stage, and the easements will be dealt with through further applications.
Okay. Great, thank you.
All right, thanks. Those are my questions too, Mr. Hindle, on the easement side. So good to have those answers. Anybody else from the committee? All right. I don't have anybody on for, oh, actually I do. I'm looking for Mr. Luisans. Mr. Luisans? Can you come forward, please? Monsieur Luisans. Is there an issue with the audio, Ms. Nguyen?
Madam Chair, he will need to unmute himself on his side.
All right, Mr. Luisans. We cannot hear you and we cannot see you. Is there anything you can do at your end? Okay. Do we have written comments from Mr. Luisans?
Madam Chair, we do not.
We do not. Okay. Well, there's not much we can do at this point. Yeah, thank you. That should be helpful. Let's give him a minute to see if he needs to, if he wants to call in. No, Mr. Luisans, we cannot hear you. We cannot see you and we cannot hear you. Did you want to call in? Since we're using the chat. All right. While we're waiting for Mr. Luisans, maybe I'll make a call out more generally. Is there anyone in the audience who's, because I don't have anyone else on my speakers list, who would like to address the committee either for or against this application? And I'm not seeing anybody come forward. Ms. Nguyen, can you just confirm that as well, that there's no hands raised? I don't see any.
Madam Chair, I can confirm there is no further public speakers who would like to speak. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. In which case then, how about we write Mr. Luisans and see if he's right, if he's actually going to call in. Otherwise, All right, well, while we're waiting then to see whether or not we can make connection with Mr. Louises, Ms. Libman, there are a number of conditions. Why don't we go through those then? Since we, my understanding is we've had discussions and the ones we have in our package will need some revision. So can you walk us through that, please?
I actually don't think they do need to be revised. We had discussion with staff and they will be applied, but we are prepared to clear them and staff is satisfied with the documentation that we have.
So no changes to the conditions? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. Unless Ms. Squazero has additional information, but my understanding was that they would be applied as is and are ready to be cleared. Because of course, we're going through the site plan process, so are working on the reports and studies.
Ms. Squazero, can you just confirm that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm confirming that. The engineer was confident that the applicant has everything needed for the conditions and it can clear them once everything is received.
Okay, all right, if that's the case, then I'm not going to raise anything about them at all. Anybody else, any questions? I guess we're not going to get a hold of Mr. Louises. We're not going to be able to have him participate from the looks of things. Was there any response in the chat before I call it a day on this? No? Yeah, Ms. Nguyen.
Madam Chair, I did attempt to call Mr. Louis C's and there was no pickup. Unfortunately, I cannot get a hold of him.
All right, well, in which case then I think we've tried everything we can and we've given a lot of time. So we're just going to move on. Then I'm going to close the public consultation portion of the hearing down. So any additional comments or questions before we go to a vote, members of the panel? No? Okay. All right, then all those in favor of the consent application and because I think it's a consent and it's a discharge, partial discharge of mortgage. All those in favor? Yeah, okay, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you very much for your patience, Ms. Libman, for that. And I think we're done for the evening.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Need a motion to adjourn. Ms. Markovich, seconded by Mr. Hindle. And with that, then I'd like to thank our committee staff. I didn't have a chance to introduce you at the beginning. I forgot all about it. So, but thank you to our committee staff. Ms. Nguyen, who else is here? Is it Mr. Jones? Is it Mr. Jones?
Yes,
it is, yes.
It is, okay, so it is, and Mr. Belmar, thank you so much. Also to our planners, Ms. Glazero, Ms. Kelly, and as always, Ms. Young as well. We appreciate your support during these hearings. Without you, we might be a little lost.